Susan Krumdieck. I'm the chair in Energy Transition Engineering at Heriot-Watt University, and I'm happy to tell you today about the research work that I'm going to be leading in the Scottish Islands on the project of decarbonizing, getting to net zero, getting to a sustainable energy system by 2030. Okay, fair enough, right? Luckily, I'm not doing it alone. We have partners in this, in the three islands, Outer Hebrides, Shetland, and Orkney. And we have partners with Heriot-Watt, EMEC, Community Energy Scotland, and Aquaterra. And I'm happy to tell you today about our exciting research program. We have a way that we're going about doing this. It's not academic research in the lab at Heriot-Watt. It's what's called action research. And action research is much more of a journey. The researchers are facilitators. They learn from the people in the islands, the companies in the islands, the councils in the islands, and they learn what people need, what they value, and they bring that together, collect data as appropriate, and then coordinate with cohorts of people to explore how they can change to reduce their fossil fuel use. We call this activity the Transition Lab. It sits within the Island Center for Net Zero, and it is, like I said, about a journey of multiple stakeholders. Now, in this interesting structural diagram of the activities of the Transition Lab, you can see that there's a lot of coming and going, and there's nobody excluded, and there's nothing we won't do. We will model, we will look at sustainability, we will look at pathfinding, and we'll work with oil companies, with whiskey companies, with households, with schools. So a very interesting mashup structure. Now, what are we actually working on? Well, if you're going to decarbonize by 2030, you're going to have to deal with the fact that most of the energy supply in the islands is petroleum. And what are you going to do about that petroleum? Use much less of it. All right, so the work of the research is to identify and carry out carbon downshift projects. One big carbon downshift project? No, many carbon downshift projects. But while we're doing that, you know what else? We can actually be doing regeneration projects. We can rebuild biocapacity and well-being while reducing carbon. Don't believe me? Cool. If we already knew how to do these things, we wouldn't need research, would we? So that's what we're doing here, is that kind of research. Stuff we don't know, which means we're going to get to be innovative. The innovative approach here comes from working on impossible problems, but also from working from a new perspective. Most people are real familiar with the perspective of top-down. Top-down research is about building scenarios, looking at pathways, looking at new technologies that produce energy in new ways, new infrastructure, that sort of thing. Stuff from the top down, stuff that comes from outside of your own company or your own community. We're going to be doing action research, which is with the people from the ground up. So that means we're going to be working with communities, households, schools, farmers, fishers, companies, manufacturers, organizations, and we're going to be looking at, from their perspective, what do they really value, what do they need, what's important, what's essential, and what kind of performance are they looking for, and what kind of projects can we do. And that means that of course, all of this is still in the context of the top-down, but the kinds of things we work on then are learning new things, learning new skills and new ideas. Yes, technology and built environment, but there again, it's quite different if you're looking at it from the ground up. And behavior and society, because that is where we're at. And when we're working on this, innovation is definitely there, but it's not innovation of new technologies that someone offshore can come up with. It's innovation in organization, in new ideas, new ways of having new businesses, and the ways to finance those, and of course the regulations that are required. What kind of problems are we going to be working on? Well, where's The petroleum, that's the question. And the petroleum is in transport. Yes, it is. It's in the lifeline services transport. It's in the transport of tourists to and from the islands, people around the islands. And that's done by ferries and by air, and once on the island, by land transport. So these are the major projects. You might be used to hearing about net zero in regards to grid electricity or something like that, but we're going to work on the petroleum itself, and yes, the built environment, because the homes and buildings need to be fit for the future of low carbon. And if you're going to work in that space where the petroleum is, what do you need? Well, first thing is data. So we're working on new ways of understanding and gathering data that isn't disconnected from the ground. It's not disconnected from the people using the data and who need the data. So this is another interesting area of research, is just the data itself. But then there's modeling, there's gamification, and there is projects which change something, which then we learn from. So that's the action research, where you actually perturb the systems by changing them, and then learn about that by observing what happens. Does any of that sound crazy? That's because the things we're talking about are wicked problems. What does a wicked problem mean? Well, a wicked problem is something that works great just the way it is. Thank you very much. And there is no question that petroleum, gas, and coal actually work pretty well. That's why we've been using them for 70 years and more. But what we do know is that the use of those fossil fuels in those very large quantities that we've gotten up to is not sustainable. The volumes have to go down. But we're using those fossil fuels to satisfy our needs. And so it seems really scary. We don't actually want to change this because we don't know what else we would do. But my gosh, those things cause harms. Yes, they do. So we have to change them, right? Yeah, but how could he change them? They were great. All right, that's a wicked problem. Wicked problems will defeat you. They will stop you from working on them. So what are we going to do? We're going to use a new methodology that has been developed to take on these wicked problems of fossil fuel downshift. And that new methodology is called transition engineering. In fact, there's a methodology within the toolbox of transition engineering that's called Interdisciplinary Transition, Innovation, Management, and Engineering. And yes, it has the best acronym ever, in time. There's multiple steps, and in this stakeholder journey that you go through in this methodology, you're actually putting together engineers, policymakers, citizens, manufacturers, the people who are involved in that use of petroleum, and you're working through a process where you get to a point of insight in how you really can change. It's really fun and exciting. And I tell you what, new ideas and new innovations come out of this every time, and they're projects that we can do. Therefore, we're going to do them and learn from them and take these steps towards the future that we want to gift to our little ones. So thanks for listening, and definitely keep track of what's happening in the islands and join in.